Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Rosenthal. Corey with Creative Habitats, going over the final leg of our landscape journey. Which is the plants, perhaps the most exciting part of all. So, let's go and take a look at what I've come up with. So, we've zoomed in here. I've drawn in the pathway. This leads to the patio and it comes down here to the dock. The boldest feature of my landscape suggestion are the Japanese maples through here. I'll go over some of these other plants, but let's first take a look at the kind of feel that I'm trying to create with these Japanese maples. Now, there's red Japanese maples, there's yellow Japanese maples. This would be a coral bark Japanese maple. And this is the kind of combination that I would be looking at trying to create where there's just a variety of different colors in there. Years ago, I saw this photo, absolutely fell in love with the way that this feels and looks. So it would be an honor to be able to recreate that in your yard there. Let's move on to this section here. So we've got the steps that come up, and then you go over to the patio, which is here. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So this is the hardscape end of it. This is the landscape end of it. So what we're looking at here, the first thing I want to draw your eye to is the pathway that comes down, and you're surrounded by ferns in this location. A couple of the other plants in here, these are native azaleas. These are deciduous. They drop their leaves in the wintertime, but they put on an amazing spring show. And then these are traditional azaleas. We would probably be choosing encore azaleas so that you get a repeat of color throughout the season. So let's take a look at some examples of what these look like. So when you have a mass planting of ferns, this is the feel that creates. I use this photo right here because you have a pathway similar to what we see here, surrounded by ferns. So that's the feel that I'm looking at creating along that pathway. Native azaleas. Native azaleas are sort of a crepe myrtle form that has blooms that come out in early spring, and they're a great butterfly attractor. There's a number of those on the market. So this is a pink one, probably Piedmont, which is actually, I find this in the woods a lot of places around here. These are examples of some more. I'm not sure what the exact name of these are. I took this photo at native azaleas that we have at our shop. They really do attract butterflies. You see the butterflies trying to get the nectar from these blooms right here. All right, let's move on. So we've come from the dock. We've gone past the patio. We're going to look down this pathway here. This is the hardscape end of it. And this is the landscape end of it. These are the native azaleas. These are the traditional azaleas. And in here you see the ferns. But as we go down this path, a couple of other accents that I can think of is incorporating some boulders into this path, incorporating some perennials into this path, and also perhaps the most striking part of this is around your patio. This is a smaller tree called serviceberry. I love serviceberry. It's become the dogwood replacement. It has white blooms in the spring. Those blooms turn into fruit for not big fruit, very, very small fruit, just like a dogwood would have, that birds will gravitate towards. And then in the fall, it has some really beautiful fall color, which would go really well with the Japanese maples that are in here. So this is, I've never seen a serviceberry this big, but I suppose this is how big they can get. But they have they're covered in white blooms. And then in the fall, they put on a really beautiful display of fall color. So, all right, moving on. Let me just highlight this too. I don't feel like if we look at this particular photo, you see where the serviceberry are around the patio. One of the other reasons I put these in is these would be fantastic to have uplighting on to create a really wonderful warm feel of ambiance on this patio at night. If you're there in the summertime, it's just great to have that lit up. All right, let's move to this lower section down here. I was like, what could we do here that would be particularly unique? One of the things that I love to do with plants is be able to have obviously the opportunity to enjoy them outside, but also have the opportunity to bring them inside. And one of the things that we really focus on are bulbs that are cut flowers that you can bring inside. Let me introduce you to a couple of those. So this is Peruvian daffodil. It is not a daffodil, but it's just called that. I'm particularly inclined to this one. I grew up with this in the 70s. This was all over my grandmother's garden, so it's sort of my signature. But just a very tough and reliable bulb, and it has really beautiful blooms like what you see here. Peruvian daffodil is related to not ornamental onion, but this is an ornamental onion right here. But it is also related to, I'm sorry, not gladiolus, but this is another one that's great for cut flowers. Here we go. It is related to amaryllises. Amaryllises are great. They're also a tough plant. We've grown them a lot. I've seen these or used these in a lot of my customers' yards, and you can just get a lot of color out of it. Whether it be just viewing it from your dock or actually cutting these and bringing them inside. Lastly, calla lilies. This is another one. I brought these in for my wife and come back a month later and thought that she cut them recently. Found out that they were the same ones that I had put in a vase a month ago. This is a very persistent cut flower, and even if it's just outside, very, very beautiful. Even the foliage is too. So I included this just to say this is a little bit of a concept of what we could have down there by the retaining wall. I was even thinking about too, these are so tough. If you ever had to redo your retaining wall, as long as you're not digging them out, if these were all stepped all over, they are still going to persist. They'll still be okay. So thinking forward on that. Also wanted to highlight on the existing retaining wall. One of my suggestions was to work with it, but to hide it. And one of the ways that we could hide it would be to do something like what you see here. Obviously, I would choose a vine that's going to droop down more. But this is the concept that I would have for that retaining wall and hiding it, making it look like it is a positive feature versus a negative feature. So that has been a tour of the initial thoughts that I had on plantings. I could literally come up with many, many other layouts and designs, but that's what hit me originally. But I think that this could do an awful lot to make this area look very, very amazing and very beautiful. So with that, those are my design videos. I'm going to send this on to you as well as the estimate. So that's coming at you right here. Thank you so much for your patience. Corey with Creative Habitats Landscaping.